Hi there, Suri Crowe for the MeidasTouch network. All right, several of you commented that you like it when I, a former reporter for corporate media, call out the mainstream press. And I am more than happy to oblige your request because right now, writ large, the mainstream press is doing a terrible job at a critical point in history. Okay, so Donald Trump recently gave a rambling 1.5-hour press conference at his safety house, aka Mar-a-Lago Resort, with some of the biggest names in media from some of the most prestigious news outlets, where they all gathered to basically let the former president and current Republican presidential candidate vent and lie without any real-time fact-checking. And all of the major networks carried it live, just the way they did in 2016. And here's a little sampler.
It would have never happened. You wouldn't have inflation. A lot of great things would have happened. But now you have millions and millions of dead people. And you have people dying financially because they can't buy bacon. They can't buy food.
What? What is he talking about? No bacon? I don't even eat bacon, but I'm pretty sure that there is bacon that is available to American consumers. Then there's this constant drumbeat of what Trump says are millions of people crossing our borders from prisons, jails, and mental institutions from other countries.
She can't do an interview. She's barely competent, and she can't do an interview. But I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight. Why is it that millions of people were allowed to come into our country from prisons, from jails, from mental institutions, insane asylums, even insane asylums? It's a mental institution on steroids.
First, there's no evidence whatsoever that millions of people are crossing U.S. borders who are escaping prisons, jails, or insane asylums. Secondly, as the Lincoln Project points out, I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump is confusing people who are seeking asylum in the United States with people who are in insane asylums. So this is not a man who is remotely fit for the Oval Office. And then there is his weird obsession with crowd size and his incessant lies about it.
Say it.
Are you worried at all about the size of Harris's crowds?
Oh, give me a break. Listen, I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished. It's so dishonest, the press. And here's a great example. I had in Michigan recently 25,000 people, and 25,000 people we just couldn't get them in.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz rolling up in Detroit. But down in Florida, the elite reporter set had their recorders and cameras trained on a pathological liar with absolutely no pushback, no fact checking. And I was not the only reporter seeing red over this. The brilliant Lawrence O'Donnell of MSNBC was furious.
Most of the questions were terrible. The silliest possible questions you could ask, questions about campaign strategy. What a waste of a moment with a convicted felon former president to ask questions like that. Here's one question. Mr. President, can you tell us a bit more about your upcoming interview with Elon Musk? That was an actual question to Donald Trump today. Question. What do you think of Kamala Harris not picking Josh Shapiro as her VP? Most of the questions were wasted questions like that. And so Donald Trump could just ramble about anything that came to mind, including lying, of course, about the size of his crowds. And the biggest lie he now tells about the size of his crowds is the lie about which of his crowds was his biggest crowd. He now claims that the crowd that gathered to hear him try to overthrow the presidential election on January 6th was his biggest crowd ever. It wasn't. Investigations have estimated that that crowd was about 53,000 people. Today, Donald Trump said that the biggest crowd he's ever spoken to, that was it. He actually had a much bigger crowd on his inauguration day, but that was still a smaller crowd than Barack Obama's inauguration day, so he had to lie about that, too, at the time. Today, Donald Trump said that his January 6th speech attracted a bigger crowd than Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech in Washington in 1963, the most famous speech ever delivered in Washington by someone who was not president of the United States. Martin Luther King's crowd was 5 times the size of Donald Trump's crowd on January 6th. I know it can sound almost tedious that I am fact-checking Donald Trump's crowd size lies today, but that's the way Donald Trump wants it to feel. He has been telling crowd size lies for 9 years, and he wants to wear the news media down to the point where they just accept it.
Okay, I reported the other day about these multi-million-dollar book deals that reporters like New York Times' Maggie Haberman and the legendary Bob Woodward, among so many other journalists, have cut along with juicy deals with networks as expert news analysts. And yet when covering a former president who is a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, a pathological liar, a violent insurrectionist, a hoarder of classified documents, a presidential candidate who praised Vladimir Putin when President Biden negotiated a high-wire and high-stakes global prisoner release, a man who cannot form a complete sentence, who is in clear cognitive decline, not one of these highly paid journalists asked him if he was fit to be president. Not one of them asked him for proof of his mental fitness at this press conference, or asked him why he praised Vladimir Putin after American hostages were released, or held him to account about Project 2025. No one asked him about that because he claims he doesn't know anything about it, even though there is evidence of him hanging around with Kevin Roberts, who is the architect of Project 2025. Or did anybody ask him about flight logs showing that Donald Trump spent lots of time with Jeffrey Epstein? Those are questions that I would ask Donald Trump, but none of those reporters did. And the questions that they did ask, Donald Trump didn't answer.
Question they ask. A lie is not an answer. Donald Trump never answers reporters' questions. Never.
But here's the headline in the embarrassingly bad New York Times. Trump spoke for about 65 minutes and answered 37 questions from reporters by my count, according to this reporter, Taylor Robinson. The paper of record? What a pathetic joke. I'm serious. This is the paper that for 2 years has written nothing but negative headlines about President Biden. They took a hit out on Hunter Biden, constantly accusing him of wrongdoing that was never proven to be true. And they hounded President Joe Biden about his cognitive abilities, on and on and on it goes. But that is the weak sauce pablum headline that they write about Donald Trump, who rambled on, made no sense in this press conference at Mar-a-Lago. And then here's Jen Rubin, who is an opinion writer for the Washington Post, but she was mad tweeting about this press conference yesterday. Here's one of her tweets that said, "The press should report this as incoherent, displaying mental deterioration. He is unwell. The refusal to explain how unhinged he is and instead to normalize is reprehensible." I agree, Jen. I agree. And what is so extra reprehensible about it is the venom which these same sedated reporters at Mar-a-Lago yesterday attacked a very cognitively sharp President Biden at an hour-long press conference on foreign affairs last month.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, and the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. Officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing by leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin. I said, oh, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I don't know if it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden.
Up names of world leaders as President Biden deftly and brilliantly explained complicated foreign affairs to them for an hour unscripted after leading a several-day NATO conference after returning from global travel. I just can't with the abject failure of the press. And yeah, I am calling them out on it because in large part, it is their fault that we ended up with Donald Trump in the White House in the first place because they did not do their job and they're repeating the same mistakes again. They hounded President Biden about his mental acuity, which, as it turns out, has been just fine all the way along.
President, I can tell you, has seen a neurologist 3 times as it's connected to a physical that he gets every year that we provide to all of you.
It's a very basic, direct question.
Wait. Hold on. Wait a second.
8 times, or at least once, in regards to the president specifically.
Hold on a second.
That's what you should be able to answer by this point.
Wait, no. No, wait a minute. Ed, please. A little respect here, please. So every year around the president's physical examination, he sees a neurologist. That's 3 times, right? So I am telling you that he has seen a neurologist 3 times while he has been in this presidency. That's what I'm saying.
So nasty. There they were hounding Karine Jean-Pierre about this neurologist who was coming to visit the White House on a Parkinson's committee that every year the president invites this same doctor to advise and consult on the presidential Parkinson's committee. But they were so sure that this had to do with President Biden's deteriorating health. And it had nothing of the sort. And they never apologized for it. They just venomously attacked the White House and President Joe Biden. So there is such a clear double standard here. It sickens me. It is wrong. They are going after this man who has integrity. You may not agree with his policies. I think his policies are pretty damn good. And as I reported the other day, took us out of a death spiral that Donald Trump and Republicans left us in, but just the nastiness with which they cover President Biden. And we also saw some of this when Barack Obama was in office. And yet Donald Trump gets in office or at a press conference and they're just like, oh, you know, what did you have for lunch? Okay, I'm kidding about that one. They didn't ask, but they did ask absurd questions like this. Like, what do you think about Kamala Harris passing over Josh Shapiro for VPIC? I mean, what a stupid question. Yes, I am salty about this and I will remain so. I don't make 6 figures a year. I do not work for network news. I don't have $1 million, book deal, but I could have swept the floor with those highly paid, prestigious reporters who were at the Mar-a-Lago press conference yesterday. I'm sure I would have gotten kicked out by an enraged, psychopathic Donald Trump. Yeah, I would have, but I would have been doing my job. By asking questions that they should be asking of somebody who wants to hold the keys to the nuclear codes at the highest level of power in America and arguably the world. Shame on them. Honest to God, shame on them. So yeah, I'm going to continue to call them out. I am salty Suri. It's inexcusable. And I think that's why more and more people are coming to independent outlets like here at the MeidasTouch Network, where we're going to continue to call them out and continue to report the truth and continue to hold people in power to account. Abso-flippin-lutely. All right. Well, my name is Salty Suri of the MeidasTouch Network. Thanks for joining me here today. I hope to see you back here soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And also, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the support and love you guys poured out the other day on my comeback video after my breast cancer treatments. It just meant the world to me. And if I didn't respond to you personally, I probably did read your comments. And I just want to send all the biggest love in the world out to y'all. The Meidas Mighty are awesome. Peace.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.